gas flaring and everything else, so everybody's up to date. This is a brief presentation. We feel everybody here is pretty well up to speed on the data and stuff, so we're not going to present a lot of data. We're going to present conclusions and updates. We'll stay here until the last question's asked. So if you have questions, we're going to be here. Go, Deborah. The first thing I want to do is update the sinkhole. This is the configuration of the sinkhole. This is the configuration, the middle of February. It's about 1,000 feet across here now, and 600 to 700 feet across here. It was 12 acres when this was done, with settlement over 20 acres. Click. The recent slough-in that you heard about was over in this area this weekend. And John estimated another acre went into the sinkhole, so now it's probably on the order of 13 acres in the sinkhole with settlement over a larger area. The gas in the aquifer, we've defined a criteria for remediation, and that is reduced gas pressures so the gas can no longer come to the surface. Very simple. Right now there are 25 wells venting in the aquifer. They're venting between 120 and 150 1,000 cubic feet per day. You've seen the flares. The wellhead pressures are stable. In the analysis we've conducted, last time I told you the effective radius of influence appeared to be around 500 feet. With the new data we've got, we've had to reduce that to somewhere between 250 to 300 feet. And we've talked about installing additional vent wells below Bayou Corn and Grand Bayou, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. Next. We've talked about this also. We're into a long-term management situation. This is the new updated gas map. This is based on all the PDKs and all the information we've got out of the seismic shot holes and everything else. This is probably the best representation of gas in the aquifer that we've had since this started, because we finally got enough data to be able to start contouring the gas thicknesses in and around the disturbed rock zone is here that we talked about last time. The sinkhole's right under there. It's hard to see, but sinkhole's right there. Oxy 3 is right there. You can see we've got gas over a fairly large area. Right now, the volume in the aquifer that we calculate is about 45 million standard cubic feet of natural gas. What we don't know is how much gas is coming in every day. So this is a dynamic situation, but that's where we're at. That's the latest number that we've calculated. As new data become available, as I promised you, we're going to be updating you through the community meetings. Next. Don Marlin, who's our 3D seismic expert, has identified 8 potential hydrocarbon zones that are feeding into the disturbed rock column and coming up through the disturbed rock into the aquifer. This will be updated when we get the new 3D seismic towards the end of April. His first task, once he gets that data, is going to be to reprocess this and give us a much better idea of how much gas volume potentially is down at depth, between depths of around 600 to 6,000 feet. Next. The vent well area, and this accounts for a smaller radius of influence. The green circles here are essentially the radius of influence around the vent wells Texas Brines put in. They're doing a really good job putting these in. We do have the issue underneath the community. I understand people's reluctance to put flares and vent wells in there. So what DNR has instructed us to do is retain an expert in horizontal drilling technology for environmental problems. We have installed, I personally have installed a number of horizontal wells for remediation purposes. It is a possibility the problem we've got in the community is being able to control the pressure when you're drilling. If we cause a fracture to get to the surface, normally when that happens you get drilling mud out there and it looks a little bad. We've got gas pressures to deal with. We cannot have fracturing get to the surface with our gas pressures. So that's one of the big things our expert has been asked to do. Take a hard look at this. We've also contracted two of the best horizontal drilling companies in the United States. These are people who drill wells for environmental purposes, not deep oil and gas wells. That's a different technology. These are for environmental purposes. And we've contacted them. They've worked for CB&I, and we're asking them the same question. If we wanted to install horizontal wells, because a number of people asked at the last meeting, can we do it such that we don't have a fracture getting to the surface that would release the gas? Because that would not be a good thing. Next. This is just the overall vent well performance. You can see Texas Brine, here's where they started installing a lot of new wells. You can see the increase in cumulative gas flared. We're at about 10.5 million cubic feet flared. You can also see it on the individual daily total. This is when one of the wells by the road produced a lot of gas in a very short period. And we had KB Wellbore estimate what that gas was. It was before they could get a flow meter on it. But you can see that here's the daily flow total, and right now we're running about double what it was last time I was out here and talked to you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Oxy 3 cavern, but what I want you to see on here, because we're going to talk about Oxy 1 here in a minute. Oxy 3 is here, it's filling up, we've talked about that. The 3-level alert system with the parish, we've talked about. But I want you to see the Oxy 1 cavern is up here. It's much shallower. In fact, the bottom of Oxy 1 is above the top of Oxy 3. Oxy 1, the top of Oxy 1 is at about 2,500 feet, and the bottom is at about 3,200 feet. It also is a much, much smaller cavern. It's only about a third the size of Oxy 3. So I want you folks to understand the perspective. Oxy 1 is smaller and shallower than Oxy 3 is. Next. We are monitoring everything around Oxy 3, but also around Oxy 1. The seismic array that Texas Brine has put in is a very, very good seismic array. We can monitor tremors and earthquakes all over the entire area. In fact, the system will actually pick up major earthquakes anywhere in the world. So this is a very good array, and we're monitoring this daily. In addition to Dr. Pettit, who you've met, Dr. Horton with Siri, who was involved from day one through a USGS contract, has now been contracted with DNR to provide ongoing seismic expertise for monitoring these events. And he's fully engaged now. He's actually implementing a new computer system so we can get things. These tell us how many events are occurring per day. So those of you who have looked at the helicord